Oh, it could be expensive.
If you're doing it yourself, it's going to
Potentially
be
dangerous.
time-consuming.
Oh, yeah, definitely potentially dangerous.
Potentially dangerous, but not if you take the right steps to
And
shore
what
it
are the
up.
right steps, though? I mean, that's...
Well, you got to shore the thing up before you start to work on it.
I guess probably... I know that, Brian. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Fine Home Building Podcast. It's our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. I am editorial director Justin Fink. Nope, Rob's not paying attention. I'm not really. I'm the editor, Justin Fink. I just wanted to see if Rob was listening.
Yeah.
Rob
I perked up.
Rob is the editorial director, and Brian is our design editor. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Justin.
Morning, Justin.
Today we got some questions. I'm gonna struggle to stay. I'm highly caffeinated right now. I'm trying to because I got up in the middle of the night last night to finish a project.
Like a woodworking project?
Yeah. So it's a little backstory.
I think we need a backstory.
My friend, when you do some woodworking things, sometimes friends will get in touch for little crafty things that they need. And one of my friends does like chalkboard art and some other stuff, and for weddings and whatnot. So this one friend of a friend of a friend was having a wedding, and they wanted this like a 24 by 48 inch board stained and clear coated so that they could like hand paint a seating chart onto it and like prop it on a table. It was really nice looking. She sent me a photo of the inspiration, and I said, yeah, no problem. Then I forgot about it like 9 times, and the wedding is in like 2 days. And so I said, okay, I got to get this done. So I bought, and I can't just do it simple, obviously. I can't like buy a piece of plywood and like put a coat of poly on it. It's like, no, I'm going to put stain on it, but I'm going to do the coat of dye first because I want that stain to have like some depth to it. And I'm really going to wow these people. Of course, I'm getting no money for this, but for some reason I feel the need to whatever.
Spend a boatload of money.
So I get a piece of birch plywood, which, by the way, in and of itself is a struggle to find a decent piece of a quarter sheet of plywood at the store.
Decent with
like without any filler, there's a part missing or a void, and they like fill it in with epoxy or like that putty.
Yep.
And you're paying a huge premium for getting a small sheet, but anyway. So I get that, bring it home. I do sand it smooth, like to 220. Put down a nice coat of lemon yellow dye, so it's like got a nice base to it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I seal coated that with some shellac, sanded that, and then I put down some just Minwax stain over the top of it. But the piece of plywood was kind of crummy. Like, it didn't have awesome grain, and it even with the shellac, it still was a little blotchy. So I had to kind of layer up the stain a little bit, like leave it a little thick in some areas to kind of try to mask some of the grain discrepancies underneath. And it looked badass. Like, it looked really good, like a nice streaky, long, drawn-out finish, almost like a little striated, like a nice ribbony kind of mahogany. It was really nice. But then the stain didn't dry. Like, and I get to the day after, and I'm going, stain's not dry. And I'm like, the heat's on in here. Everything's dry. Humidity's awesome. What's going on? Why isn't it drying? So then I was like, I'm going to give it more time. I said, sorry, I need another day. You can't have it yet. I'm like, okay, we can still make it work. I still have time to draw what I need to draw. Still wasn't drying. And I went to bed last night. Still wasn't dry. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was like, what am I going to do? Because I can't. I'm screwing somebody else who needs to get something done for a wedding. So it's like, so I got up in the middle of the night, and I cut a new piece of plywood.
Oh, you started over.
I essentially started over. But this time I had a piece of nice oak plywood, so I just sanded it, prepped it, and then put clear coat of poly on it so that it's nice looking. It's not as deeply stained and everything, but it's done and ready to go. But yeah, so that was that was from like 2:30 to 3:30 this morning.
Sounds like a good time. Do you know why that stain on the original project was not drying?
Well, stain is meant to absorb into wood. It's not intended to sit on the surface and dry like paint. And if you ask me like the chemistry of, well, why can't it anyway? I'm sure that maybe it would eventually, but this is the part that I don't fully understand. And maybe somebody, I need to ask Peter Gedries, who's written for us, and I meant to send him an email today. because I've worked with him a lot on doing articles where you layer stains and do glaze coats. And Brian, you've probably done some glazing stuff too, where it's pretty common to do a base coat of dye, a seal coat of shellac, and then another color of oil-based stain over it, and you get that nice depth.
Yeah.
And you can really control that.
Otherwise, it would just get muddy if you're like, applying like stain right over dye, and it's all just kind of binding together.
Yes. But the way I always learned it from Peter was to mix a little bit of gel stain for that top coat, to mix a little gel stain with glaze base, which is like a clear, goopy, I don't know what it is. It's oil-based, something, alkyd glaze base. And you mix it together, and then it like kind of gives it, as he calls it, it gives it some slip. You can kind of draw it out and smooth it and kind of manipulate it a little better. But what I don't know is, I started to think, I'm like, is there something in that glaze base that's allowing that thicker coat of oil stain to cure? Because, like, why, if I'm brushing on a thick coat of oil stain, does it not ever set up? But if I put it in a glaze base, then it does. Is there like Japan dryer in there or something? And I don't know the answer to that. And that's where I was at 3:30 in the morning going, I wonder if there's something, maybe that's where I screwed up by not mixing it in a glaze base, by just trying to put the stain on.
Did you try to any embarrassing techniques to try to get that stain to dry?
No, because I mean I brought it inside thinking that maybe like near my wood stove would be warmer and more. But it's not. You can't use a heat gun. You can't blow on it. I mean, there's nothing.
I was just wondering how far afield you went.
I know better at this point.
I'm going to put it in the oven.
Yeah, and I don't even know how that necessarily works with oil-based stuff.
It doesn't.
Right?
It won't do anything.
Solvent-based stuff, because it's a chemical reaction.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not releasing moisture like a water-based finish.
Right.
You know, once the moisture's gone, it's dry.
I just know, like, in like those stressful, panicked times.
Oh yeah, you try anything.
Your mind just goes everywhere.
Oh yeah. I mean, it definitely did, but I didn't do them because I know that they don't work. And but it is a very annoying feeling when you go back and you touch something and it's still tacky, and you're like, what the hell? You know, and then there's nothing to do. I wasted 2 days waiting for it to dry, and then I took mineral spirits and wiped it all off.
Oh, really?
It comes right off. No problem.
And that's the beauty of using
the shellac.
Yeah. That if it's not shaping up the way that you want it to, you could just wipe it off and start over.
Yeah.
It is pretty sweet.
Definitely talk to Peter about that, because it'd be nice to know like why in certain instances things just aren't setting up as they should.
And I thought he told me that you could do it either way, but I must be missing some piece of information in there.
Were the stains new?
No, it was not.
Had they been sitting out in the cold? Could that have something to do with it?
Maybe. I mean, maybe it does. I don't. Yes and yes. They were old and they were sitting out in the cold, but I just get the feeling that it was too thick, and I don't know. I don't know what too thick is and when it's okay.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, yesterday I was the cleaning of the natural bristle brush. I have several pet peeves around this topic.
I was going to ask what you applied with.
Well, so my first complaint with this is, why, when you go to the store and you look in the back of a can of finish or a can of paint, and it makes a recommendation for application, it'll say, apply with a natural bristle brush. You go, cool, natural bristle. Go over to the brushes. None of the labels on brushes say natural bristle. Right. They say China bristle. Or, I mean, are there other options with natural? I guess there are.
Yeah.
But and then if you go to a different can, it'll say apply with a synthetic brush. And then you go over to the paint brushes and it'll be polyester brush. Why can't they just talk to each other so that they're saying the same terms?
You just get like the Purdy Chinex, right? It's like a little bit of a blend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just get that in your cupboard.
Why can't they just say the same piece of advice?
Or call the products the same thing.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's the same with oil-based products across the board. You have the modified waterborne, you have the alkyd, you have oil-based. They're all saying different terms that all mean. They're all forcing you to look in the back of the can. What do I clean this up with?
Yeah.
And that tells me what it is, because they can't just tell you on the product what it is. Probably because people are scared of oil or something. But anyway, so do you have really good techniques, Brian, for cleaning an oil brush used for an oil-based finish?
Yeah.
What is your process?
Brian throws it in the garbage.
No, I
feel like I'm using so much mineral spirits to get through it.
Yeah, I comb them.
Yeah, I was with a little metal comb, right?
I actually use a brush. I have this like a really stiff bristled
like
nylon brush, and this is something that just became. It was there one day, and I started using it, and I realized this works really well. I have a real slop sink in my basement that I don't mind, doing this kind of thing in at all, because we don't use it for anything else except for basically cleaning up, paint and work stuff. So I basically have I keep a little plastic container of mineral spirits or whatever I need, and I dip and plunge and push the brush around and try to get everything flowing. And then I put it against the inside of that slop sink, which is sort of it's a soapstone sink. It sort of has this angle pitched down, and I just brush it out, and then I dip it back in and slop it around.
You have a soapstone sink in your basement?
Yeah.
Cool.
And just brush and brush and brush.
This is a baller.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And so are you dipping back into that that one kind of small pail?
I do.
You're not rinsing that and like replacing that with
I do
clean.
I do that when this later. So I finish the brush, and I end up taking a cloth and drying it, like just patting it with a cloth, and I'll end up wrapping it in that cloth and putting it away like that. Seems to work really well. Then when I close up that container, and at another time when I realize that it's been a couple of days since I've cleaned that brush or whatever, I go down there and I pour it off into another one and get rid of the solids that settle at the bottom of it. So I keep it as clean. I keep that stuff as clean as possible, but not crystal clear clean.
Yeah.
And then when I take the brush out, now everything's kind of dry. I take the brush out again. I clean it a little bit more. Anything that's hardened up on it, I clean off now.
Okay.
So I don't try to get it like.
You're not trying to get it back to pristine.
I don't try to get back to pristine in that first cleaning. No, but before I go to use it again, now it's dry, and there might be some little. Nuggets of stuff on there.
When you go back to use it again?
Nope.
See, that's the biggest.
So you got it clean enough in that first one.
I got all the paint.
But that's the leap of faith. When you're cleaning it the first time, you're like, I think I got everything. You put it back on the shelf. You go back a week later, and it's hard as a rock.
Well, that's like, I mean, like with water-based stuff is like, you kind of plunge that, and like when you're saying plunging, like slop sink, or you're actually like fanning out all the bristles against the bottom of that vessel.
Well, it's easy when you have a faucet.
And with a faucet, but it's like you're essentially doing it until it runs clear. Whatever's coming out of the brush runs clear. I guess that's the only danger of when, in a pail of just super murky.
That's what I mean.
Mineral spirits. You don't know what else is coming out of that brush.
You don't know if it's the murky solvent coming out of the brush or the finish still coming out of the brush. That's why I can't.
I find that other than the fact that you don't want to get this stuff all over the place. You don't want to get it too much on your hands. Other than the human and environmental dangers, I actually find that these products clean up easier than a paintbrush loaded with water-based paint. Like I find I clean them a lot quicker.
Really?
Yep.
You can clean an oil-based product off a brush faster than a water-based product.
It seems to be faster and easier to get the stuff off with the right solvent than I have getting, and maybe it's the way I use them because, I'm not painting a house with oil-based stuff and dipping it all day long. It's mostly like a small project
when
I'm using this kind of
super loaded brush.
Right.
Yeah.
So
finishing something small.
So it's not all jammed up onto the tang and everything.
Maybe that's why. Maybe it's actually the way I'm working with these brushes that makes it easier to clean. But I find it like, I end up with brushes from water-based paint that I end up not cleaning well enough, and then I get hard bristles more than I do with oil-based stuff. Yeah.
I was talking to my mom used to be a watercolor artist, and I was telling her this story, and she said that a technique she learned for cleaning brushes, obviously did watercolor, so she used water-based stuff, was to grab one hand on the tang of the brush and one hand kind of on the tip of the bristles and just kind of shimmy it back and forth while you're applying the solvent or underneath the stream of water, and it kind of loosens up the stuff all the way up under the tang. So as you're cleaning it, because that's where it kind of gets all jammed up.
A water-based brush, I just put upside down underneath the faucet and just let it pour in there and squeeze it out and open it up and then immediately comb it out so that you now smooth the brushes back in the direction that they should be and make it nice before you put it away.
Yeah.
You know what though? I don't know why we don't all have those spinners. When I was painting for work,
you got your hands.
We had a spinner.
Those are sweet.
And they're amazing. You just crank that thing.
Yeah.
And, you have to have the right place to do it because you're spinning stuff all over the world. But put it in a 5-gallon bucket and
that's
those
sweet.
things are dynamite.
I've also just knocked the the brush on like the toe of your boot.
Right.
You know, and if you give it like a few
Yeah.
hard wraps, it's pretty. I mean, probably not as well as the spinner, but it gets that excess water out of there
Yeah.
for sure. And then you comb it out, and then you put it back in its little case, and
Yeah.
it'll retain
And
its
that's
shape and
one of the
everything.
keys. Yes, putting it away nicely.
Yeah.
I feel like I just want to watch a real pro clean a brush, like in person.
Oh, we've got videos of it. Jim Lacey.
Of oil based?
All right, so not the video. We have got video of water based.
I wanna see oil-based.
We only have images of oil
Yeah,
based.
it's not good enough.
Okay.
Well, let's get a video of it.
Yeah, we'll make a video of it. We'll get in touch with the best painter we know, and we'll shoot a video of how to clean oil based
Cleaning.
And if you're
brushes.
painting all day long, I think it's worth cleaning your brush a couple times
Are
during
you
the
cleaning
day.
your roller covers?
Never. Although I save them. Like,
Why?
you know, I
you mean
save
like-
them for a full project and put them away overnight. And, and I'll even like.
Like you
know,
trap them up in plastic. If you're like,
Yeah, I'd strap them up in
If you're gonna
plastic.
do like another coat.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Wrap them in plastic, and then you're good to go. But
Yeah.
you're not saving roller covers and taking
roller-
that 5-in-1 tool and like.
I've tried it, and I find that
There's a spinner for that too. Remember you tested
there
it.
is a spinner for that. But I find that you go to use them again, and they're a mess, and you're putting this texture on your wall, and I've never been able to figure out a way to not have that.
I've tried
the next
it.
time I use them.
Because when I was shooting this this painting article many years ago with an author, Jim Lacey, he kind of cleans his roller covers, and he says, you know, he looks for a roller cover with a plastic core and not a cardboard core,
Yeah.
indicative quality. And I mean, of course, here you go. It's like nothing to him. He takes that 5-in-1 tool with that big kind of arch in it, you know, and similar to a brush, he's running water over it constantly and just like shedding the paint out of it, and then tries to dry it off. But I was like, I've tried it, and I had the similar experience where I'm just not getting like that super flat.
It's the same deal. You think you got it cleaned out, and then you put it on the shelf, and you come back, and it's hard as a rock.
Yeah, and I guess if you can figure it out, and if you're a pro, you know, you're saving a lot of money by being able to reuse them.
Oh, yeah.
But when I'm painting, it's like I'm finishing a
Yeah,
project,
and
and
it's
I'm not
also-
painting for months.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
$5 for a new roller cover is
Yeah.
I can handle it. But that's a good tip about the plastic, because the paper ones, sometimes you can't even get them off the roller at the end of the day if you've been
Yeah.
using them all day long, because they swell up and they get stuck on there. And so plastics, if you're going to try to clean it particularly.
And I wonder, I mean,
Plastic's
I'm
a
not
good tip.
a pro, so I'm only using like 9-inch roller covers. I'm not using the big like
big
24
ones.
inch.
Those
You know,
things are badass.
yeah,
Yeah,
they're
they're
badass.
great.
And so I could understand maybe in that sense, yeah, it does make way more sense to like retain
Yeah.
those as long as you can.
The thing that we tested, I don't even know who makes this or if it's still a thing, but it was some kind of a rig, and I think it was a bucket kind of a deal. Same
Yeah.
deal where it had a stream of water that sprayed against the roller, and it spun the roller.
spun the roller.
and cleaned it at the same time. So it kind of
Jim did that with a hose outside.
yeah, same deal. Yeah,
You just get that in that super fine setting, and then he just
you get
like,
it right in that sweet
in
spot.
that sweet
and
spot, and
just
the thing's going nuts.
goes- yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's that. I wanted to tell you guys.
That's some good stuff. We don't talk about painting too often.
Yeah, we should talk about it more.
Yeah, a lot of people are doing it.
Yeah, I got hammered by Tyler Grace. I posted something like I don't know, one of like a photo on Instagram. My brush was in the image, and he's like, "Dude, what did you do to that brush?" And it was like it was a quality brush. It was like
Yeah.
a Purdy's or something like that. But I just had never like really. I don't stop and take a look at the brush and be like, "Is this worn out?" You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I never do that. And then, I was like, holy smokes, look at this. Like the shoulders are all, you know, the bristles are all tapered off on the edges and inconsistent.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, this thing is shot.
Yeah, I want to know,
You
like,
know?
from a guy like Peter Gedries or a painter, like, when is it time to throw
Yeah.
it away, and how long should it last? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, is it like, oh yeah, you're going to use that brush and you're going to expect to get 2 months out of it, and that's it,
Yeah.
or is it like, no, I've had the same brushes for 15 years,
Yeah.
and you're just doing it wrong?
And that's like, I think that's my own thinking is, you know what? I really clean this brush after every single time I use it, brush it out, store it. So this thing should last forever because I'm taking care of it. But I haven't even, I've not like, you know, that other consideration, like this thing is just worn out. It's not going
Right.
to give me the finish that it could if, you know, all those bristles are just still retain that fine taper and it's even and consistent. I think once you start to get like a misshaped brush, relegate it to some other use, you know, and then just start cycling it out, you know.
What other use?
I don't know, shop dust broom, or exterior use, or for painting that, you know, like the flatness and the evenness of the finish doesn't matter that much, you know.
I wanted to tell you guys about there's an update to, and this is not, we've been going over in the office here. We're working on a story about the updates to the building code and the 2018 version that's just been released.
2019?
2018.
Oh, really?
And it's not, for anybody who doesn't understand how codes work, it's completely adoptive process. So, you know, your jurisdiction might be still using the 2009, 2012, or they could be really up to date and they're going to jump right to the newest version or pick and choose. I don't know. But anyway, we always like to keep up on, well, what's changed. And so we're working on an article about that. But one of the things that I thought that really struck me as an interesting change, and this has been trickling out over the years, so some people may already know about it, is there's updates to the solar panel codes in terms of having to retain access on the roof for firefighters. So you need to have and I don't have the language sitting in front of me, so I'm paraphrasing here, but you need to have essentially walkways on the roof so that the firefighters can walk up the roof and I think you need to have 3 feet on like the eave sides for them to walk up and down. And the eaves need to be able to support them. And you need to have 36 inches at the top by the ridge. And there's also codes if you have, like, if let's say
you mean a 36-inch wide walkway?
Yeah. And let's say you have like a shed dormer with an egress window, you need to have space below that for the firefighters to be able to walk on the roof to get you in or out of the window.
Seems interesting.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm trying to follow you a little bit as to like where these walkways need to be.
Picture a simple gable roof.
So
Yes.
the perimeter.
Basically the 2 sides and the top.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff's got a photo up on the
There
screen
you
for
go.
us. So that should, the entire perimeter of the array essentially should be a walkable surface for firefighters.
You can't run your solar panels all the way to the roof edge, essentially.
Right, okay.
You need to have, it doesn't have to necessarily be the edge. You could have it up a valley. You could have it in between 2 sets of panels.
So this is just clearance. This is
pathway.
So they need to be able to walk on the roof. This isn't like another piece of infrastructure that you need to add that allows.
No.
Okay,
They just need to be able to walk on the roof.
Oh, okay.
So it's about where you can put your you can put your panels, your modules.
And the space near the top of the ridge is so that they can punch holes in the roof for vertical ventilation, which then was like a whole rabbit hole that I got sucked down into. Like, cool, what is that all about? And there's all these. I don't know how much you guys know about firefighting, because for me it's pretty much zero. But basically, when you have like a fire in the house, and oh my God, firefighters are going to write in and be like, you got all this wrong. But if let's say you had a fire in like the attic of your house or like the second floor or whatever, and if you see a picture of the house, there's like smoke coming out everywhere, like the windows, the doors, and the firefighters have to go in there to search and rescue and you know the different operations they have. So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll first go up to the roof and they'll go all the way to the ridge and they'll punch a giant hole in your roof ridge or on one side of your roof ridge so that it creates a chimney. So all of that stuff that was coming out your windows and doors is now going up and out, and that way they can move around in the house. And I was like, that just seems weird. Like, why would you want to give the fire an excuse to like, essentially, why would you feed it fuel? And because I mean, like, you know, in a
like
wood
airflow.
stove,
Yeah. You're opening the damper.
You're
essentially.
blowing on it, yeah, and opening the chimney and blowing on it. But they said it's from what I read, they're not so concerned about vertical. They don't want the fire to spread horizontally.
So it might isolate that fire too into that.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're trying to contain it going up and out, and that way they can circulate around the house and do their thing and fight it. And
it's definitely a fascinating topic.
It's really, once you start digging into it, it's really freaking cool.
The science of fire.
Am I right to assume that firefighters only going on your roof or in your house if there's someone in there? They're not trying to save your house.
I don't think that's always the case.
Really?
Let's speculate though about this.
We should get that. Would be great.
I don't know.
Great show to get someone
I would
on
love
here
to
to talk about it.
I think it would be really cool because there's a bunch of different terminology, and I think that a lot of it is they are trying to manage the fire.
Well, they don't want it to.
They don't want it to spread.
They don't want it to spread. They don't want it to go to neighbors' houses. They want to put it out
because they have to minimize damage to your house too.
But I'd be surprised to find out that they're going to put themselves at risk to save your house by going on your roof or going indoors. Or
I'm not sure what they trust in terms of like, do they say hey, Brian, you own this house. Is everybody out? Or do they go, we don't care what you say to us. We're going in to look to see if everybody's out.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know if they have to sweep,
Right.
you know?
Sweep it.
Justin, I'll throw out the technical terms.
Well, no, I don't think that's even a firefighting term.
No, I don't think so.
They call it something else. But anyway, so you can't have solar panels all the way to the ridge because they need to go to the highest point to be able to cut these holes if they want to.
That doesn't seem to be a major shift, though, right? Because I'm trying to think of the arrays that I've seen.
And I think a lot of solar companies were already following this, but I didn't know this.
For maintenance probably anyway.
I'd never even thought about like, oh, if I had, like, for instance, at your house, it would, if you wanted to put solar panels, limit where you could put them below your dormers, because you would need to be able to come out of the dormer window and have a place on the roof to land without being on a panel.
Yeah.
Typically, you only are going to have modules on one side of the roof, though.
Yeah.
Does that is that okay then if the other side is clear?
I tried to get into that language and I don't quite understand it. I think you have to have two pathways, and one of them has to be on the side that the roof panels are on.
Yeah.
So I think, and it has to be on the street/driveway side. So there are some it is specifics to, but I don't fully understand it. You know the code is.
Yeah, it's the code.
This was an explanation of the code.
Understood.
Yeah.
Everyone go to your local building inspector and ask them what they think.
Yeah.
They're going to go, huh? Solar panels?
We're on 06.
You got those solar panels?
Yes. Yeah. If you're in Maryland, pay attention.
Why? Because
they adopt the new codes automatically. That's like the only state that does that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, by law. They adopt whatever the ICC puts out, the updates, yeah. But
builders have to be on their toes.
Don't, and, I know there's some New Jersey, I think, has some towns that do that as well. But I know when we've looked into this, we find out that more often than not, jurisdictions are on older codes, and maybe they've added some amendments to update certain things, but they don't adopt it wholesale.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when they do adopt it, then they excuse lots of things that they don't, I don't know if anyone has adopted the fire sprinkler codes that have been implemented 10 years ago.
It's interesting that a lot of these solar codes, I think what they're saying are very much, they're more lenient if you have sprinklers, because sprinklers, I guess, take care of like 80% of house fires. Like if you have a sprinkler, it's like, all right, we're good. You can pretty much get away with whatever you want.
Yeah, I remember when we worked on that story, it was pretty astounding how well they work. They work.
Have you been in a project lately that actually had sprinklers being integrated? I can't recall.
I only had to deal with one project that had them, and it was a basement remodel, and that's because it was it was like a duplex kind of a situation. Mm-hmm. But it sucked because I had to find a contractor who knew how to deal with that, and he charged me like up the wazoo to like come in and move one head or add a head or something. He's like, yeah, I'll drive over there for a half hour for $2,000. Sure. So Brian writes to us, different Brian. I'm visiting my parents' house for the holidays in suburban Mass. The house is a 200-year-old colonial that they've done lots of work to over the last 43 years, except for one small outbuilding. The barn is at least as old as the house, and my dad always resisted putting any money and very little labor into the thing. But it's now clearly going to fall down unless something's done. I'm attaching some photos, which you guys can see at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. But as far as I can tell, the front left post and the left eave plate, a.k.a. fascia, have rotted out, causing a dramatic sag in the front left corner. There's no foundation. Part of the building appears to be resting on some old stumps, and I assume there are no footings or whatever the 18th century version of a footing was. That said, the rest of the structure seems sound. My question is whether you guys think this building's worth saving with minimal investment, or should we just take it down? Presumably, fixing would involve jacking the roof up, removing or cutting out rot, replacing sistering. I'm worried that jacking it up might cause the whole thing to crumble. I'd like to save it if possible, because my folks still use it as a shed, but not if it's going to fall on top of somebody. I'm a huge fan of the podcast, listen to every episode, keep up the great work, and nice beards.
I didn't see that last part.
Clearly, he's watching the video version.
Yeah. Jeff, can you pull those photos back up?
So, I mean, we got a really old barn that's shot to hell.
It looks more like a, I don't know, how would you describe it? More like a small garage rather than people might be thinking, wow, 200-year-old colonial house,
small.
big, big,
small.
beautiful timber
Yeah.
frame barn.
No, he had surmised in
Yeah.
another part of the letter that he thought maybe it was like a garden shed or that the
Yeah.
gardener lived in it or whatever.
Well, it looks built very much like an old barn.
Yeah.
It
From
looks
those
like
few photos inside.
it looks like a one-car carriage house kind of a deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can definitely see that one corner sagging. It must have been they had a leak or something down in that lower left corner of the gable end, and that corner post at the top just took a beating.
So I'm glad. Thanks for sending the photos because it definitely helps. Because I think my instinct is always would having not seen it would just be, oh yeah, absolutely, try to save it. Old outbuilding seems to be timber framed.
Yeah.
If he was about to start to list like some of the material, I'm sure like those are like big like wide chestnut boards, like you know, as the sheathing. Those would make beautiful tables or furniture or some other use for them. But looking at it,
Jeff, do you have the interior again? Yeah.
If it's also about like what his expectations are. You are not going to get this thing to look straight, plumb, square, nice and tidy.
That's hold on that picture, Jeff. That is so we're looking at the gable end and the cross beam coming in and then the roof rafter. It looks like somebody already did some work trying to shore it up.
Yeah, it looks like stuff has been patched here and there.
It doesn't look, I don't know.
Here's
it comes down to expectations, I think.
well, and also does he say whether they would do this themselves?
Yeah, he's a relatively handy guy and has done a bunch of this kind of work.
So I feel like if you were not handy,
Yeah.
and you wanted something different or didn't even necessarily want this, I'd say let it go. Take the thing apart, knock it down, whatever. But if it could kind of be a fun project, and it's not an expensive project. We're talking about framing material. We're talking about, we're not talking about like.
Oh, it could be expensive.
If you're doing it yourself, it's
Potentially
dangerous.
dangerous.
Time consuming.
Oh, yeah, definitely potentially dangerous.
Potentially dangerous, but not if you take the right steps to
And
shore
what
it
are
up.
the right steps, though? I mean,
Well, you got to shore the thing up before you start to work on it.
I guess probably. I know that, Brian.
Short up in terms of like bracing the.
Rob, yes.
How would you brace it?
Well, we haven't seen enough to know
Okay,
that.
there
We'd
it
have to
is.
get into this.
Well,
we'd
I
have to
mean,
get into
so
the specifics.
like when I think shore
Big ol'
up, it's like
punt.
okay, now we've got to brace walls for racking. We got to brace the roof, and then we need to build maybe some cribbing because if we're going to be jacking this thing up in the air to excavate around it and get it on solid footing.
resting
I
on
don't know
a
if you're gonna
stump,
be. I don't know if
Brian.
you're going to be jacking the whole thing up, but you might be. You might not be.
Well, what's he going to do? This is the biggest punt I've ever heard.
This is awesome.
When you have a porch that's falling down on the front of a house and you want to save the porch, you stick some 2x material in the ground.
Yep.
You make sure that is not going anywhere for a little while, and then you hold the porch up with it while you take the posts down and put new posts in. I mean, we're talking about the same kind of stuff.
Yeah, but this is the corner post of a 4-cornered building.
It's
Yeah.
gone.
So where
So
do
the first thing you do is go outside that way it's leaning to, and you put some braces up to make sure that it's not going to fall in that direction.
It's most,
First and foremost. I mean, go do that actually right now
Okay.
before you go in there again.
Everybody just calm down. Let's systematically walk through how we would shore this thing up.
Well, we don't know. We'd have to go look at it. Want to go on site visit?
Well, why are you so fired up?
Look at it has taken 90 shows for Brian to come alive.
Brian is going through a period of being disinterested in life.
But he's very interested in this.
He's fed up with this barn.
Okay. Yeah. Fed up with the concept of it.
Well, so I know that for instance, in a balloon framed house, if you need to remove a header or reframe an opening or something, you put cleats across the outside of the building, like horizontal big beam fastened to the building, and then you do diagonal bracing up from the ground to support it. So that, because essentially you can't support just a floor in there because the floors are bearing on the wall. So you have to support the wall. So I wondered if that would be one way you could do this, is tie in some kind of bracing, metal brackets or something that attaches to the main structural members, and then diagonal brace those down to the ground. Because then if you take that corner post out, or if you're working on it and something goes wrong, the roof of the building is still being supported by something, because the load
On the gable end?
that load from the gable end is coming down and it's landing on that corner post, and then you have the the top of the eave wall also landing on that corner post. The top of the eave wall would be easy enough to support vertically. You could put some cribbing underneath it, like Brian said, a 4x4, 6x6 with a shimmet or a screw jack, a tall screw jack. But it's that gable end that is tricky, I think. It's like, because you have loads working on a diagonal. I don't know. It just seems a little trickier for me to wrap my head around. How do you take the corner post out of a building, especially when part of that rafter is that corner, end rafter at the gable end is also rotted out at the bottom.
Well, because this is a small building and because it's just,
the
we're just
loads
talking
aren't
about
gonna be
framing lumber,
massive.
you could really support this in a lot of ways to really feel safe before you do that. I mean, you
Right.
could go inside that gable wall, go up to the ridge and support the ridge.
Right.
You can easily support the whole gable end from falling in the direction that it looks like it wants to fall.
Yeah.
And you could do the same thing. I mean, really, you could go around the building and support the thing if you wanted to, and then go inside and now take out what you want to take out.
And I think the thing to remember here, or when you're doing this kind of structural stuff on the outside of the building, or like with a porch, like you said, is it's not as typically a problem that it's going to drop. This is going to sound weird, but it doesn't want to drop straight down. Like supporting directly underneath it, at least I found when putting in beams, and most of the problems that I've had with like supports kicking out and stuff is when you think there's a beam and I need to jack it up. Because usually up is easy enough to take care of, but when you start putting that upward pressure on something that wants to fall, it starts to roll and goes out.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to make sure you're protecting against with those diagonals. So I guess but I mean, all that to say, I don't think I would try to even save this thing. I mean, I love old things. I love old houses. I love old barns, and it just doesn't.
I would salvage all of the good wood that you can and use it for other projects, because you're not going to find stuff like that easily.
And when you rebuild something, rebuild it in the character of the house.
Yeah.
And do it right. But
Totally. Yeah, because even
even
like,
rebuild a timber frame.
yeah, because if you look at the front of this, even like, the doors aren't even close to closing.
Yeah, it's
you know what I
not.
mean? And so it has
Look
lost.
Look at that door on the right, the little man door.
It's awesome. It has moved beyond like that old New England charm, where there's like that antique look, like, oh, this has been standing up for a long time. There's some quirks about it, and it's moved beyond that to a degree where it's like this thing is about to fall. It should just be rebuilt.
Right. We're not talking about like we're trying to save like a really nicely put together building. It looks like somebody threw together a building and it held up for a miraculously long time, and now it's time to do it honor by replacing it with something that will last another 200 years.
Yeah, I'd build it the same exact way. Actually, I love like those doors on the left there.
Maybe you could take down and use the same lumber to rebuild it.
Yeah,
and just
salvage
replace
what
the
you
parts,
can. Yeah,
and then you still have, if you're really worried about the charm. I mean, I don't know. Preservation's an interesting thing. Brian and I have been talking about working with Kevin Ireton, who's been on this show, for an article called "Should Old Houses Be Saved?"
Yeah,
and we were gonna kind of dig into like what does it mean. And you're on the local
historic commission,
right? And it's just I'm just interested in. I have like a varying opinion on it. Like my opinion swings back and forth on the topic. Like, yeah, you definitely should save this, and like, yeah, just because it's old, who cares? Like, maybe it's not worth saving.
Yeah,
and I just like, and somebody like Kevin, I hope can put a finer point on it.
There's something very different about restoration and preservation. Those are two different things.
Are they?
Yeah. So, for instance, you can go to preservation carpentry program at North Bennett Tree School, and they're not necessarily talking about how to patch things up with epoxy, and then paint it so it looks like they're talking about diagnosing a house and figuring out what kind of lumber had been used. In some instances, how it was milled, and trying to replicate that to as close a degree as possible. So that's like the thing. It's like there's so many multiple means to an end, right? And the finished results can look rather similar. But I think a preservationist point of view is a little bit more, I don't know how to say it, but disciplined or structured than maybe someone who's just going to be hired to restore something or remodel something.
Looks like you were going to say something, Brian. No?
No, well, I just wanted to, the project in question, this little shed, I don't think is even either really one of those at all, because we are talking about a shed.
Watch, we don't know. This is probably like 200 years ago. This was like the local tavern. It has like some super historic relevance.
You could find that out. But in this case, it's a matter of, do you want to do it? Like when I said I would save it, that's because I think it'd be fun to do. I think it'd be a fun project to try to save that thing and to try to keep as much of it as possible. And it doesn't look like, from the photo, it doesn't look like, oh, they need this. They're putting their cars in here, and they're it is a garden shed probably. It gets trickier when a building may have some significance, and when what I find most interesting is, when is that? When does it really have some significance, and when is it just an old building?
Sometimes it has significance just because where it is, meaning like, all right, you're in the historic district. So you just, so you don't have a choice.
Someone said it had significance.
And that's so funny. I mean, the commission that I'm on is not, we're not as strict as some districts that I know of, like in Portland, Maine, for instance. I know their historic district and like their bylaws and all that kind of stuff are pretty severe. Like, I don't think that they even accept fiber cement siding. It's,
well, yeah, but you're talking about different things. You're talking about a local historic commission as opposed to a historic district. I think a commission is like, we care about what things look like. The district is like, you have rules and you have to follow these things.
Well, the commission oversees the activity within the district.
Okay. So there's an area of your town that has very set rules. Anybody living within that area has to meet that criteria. Is it the whole town, or is it like we have an old section?
No, that's what's like weird is like, if you look at the district, it kind of doesn't have any like rhyme or reason. I mean, somebody at some point, like you could look at the map and you say, all right, they're in the historic district under the jurisdiction of the historic commission. If you want to make a change, if you want to remodel your house, you want to do anything really, then you apply. You have to go before the commission, explain what you're doing. There's a little back and forth. The commission has to approve of those plans before the building inspector will issue a building permit.
Right. And I think that's it is going to be different everywhere you go, obviously.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And we did an article on that, navigating those historic commissions as a designer, architect, builder. Anyway, it's an interesting topic, put a pin in it, but it actually is a nice segue to the next question we have, because Ben writes to us, I'm in the planning stages of residing my house, and I'm curious if you all have opinions on the best material for exterior trim. Prime pine seems least expensive, but PVC options will obviously last forever. Has plastic trim become the go-to these days, to the point where I'd be a fool to still be cheaping out on wood? What would you guys do if you had to do it over again on your houses? So yeah, I mean, this is like the classic, does the fact that it lasts forever make it a better choice? A lot of things in the preservation world they have to be reversible. So like,
or some people have, like for like replacements. You know? I remember just had this recent meeting a couple months ago where somebody was trying to, or they want to replace their columns, their porch columns.
Yeah.
And they're wood, they're beautiful, The conversation came up about replacing them with structural fiberglass columns. And it was like this contentious kind of conversation. It was like, we didn't really come down hard on either way because the conversation evolved. But I don't know. I mean, so yeah, we talk about this all the time. Like the industry has moved to certain materials, and they do have benefits, certainly in terms of maintenance and sometimes cost.
So let's talk about what are we factoring into this decision? I mean, it's essentially coming down to let's say that across the board we want it to look good and we want it to match the aesthetic of the house. Yeah. We can achieve that with any of these products.
Yeah, no problem.
So then it really does come down to maintenance, right? Maintenance,
cost,
maintenance balanced against cost,
and maintenance.
Yeah. Well, durability. Is durability and maintenance fair to group together?
No.
Okay.
Because durability could be longevity of the product. I mean, maintenance, I guess to some degree it can, but if we're talking about rot, if we're talking about painting as maintenance, that's a different level than, you're going to have to repair rot.
Okay.
And cut out chunks of this and patch it, but that's different than maintenance, right? That's repair. So I think durability and maintenance, there's a difference.
But I think it comes down to
and lifespan.
Yeah. I think what's motivating that decision making process is like, am I having to go back and touch this thing to any degree, whether it's to paint it, whether it's to replace a board or rotten aspects of it, and how quickly.
I guess the frustrating thing to me is I tend to be a wood guy. I don't, from a carpentry perspective, I don't enjoy working with PVC trim at all. I don't like the smell of it. I don't like how it sticks to you. I don't like how floppy it is, how much it moves and expands and contracts. And I just don't like it. I period.
There's something about
I've certainly installed a lot of it.
how you shape wood, you know, like whether it's a scribe or anything like that, it actually lends it's super flexible. I mean, flexible in terms of, I guess, usage, you know, like where certain, you know, like you're not planing certain fiber cement products.
But all we're doing,
you know?
But even when I say that, I know that I'm just being unjustifiably romantic about it. Like, if that's the case, then why don't I pack my lunch in a metal lunchbox, and you know, because it's just better.
There's you know, it's going to be a unanimous vote for wood in terms of from carpenters and people who work with it in terms of working with it.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, we could say that.
Yeah, I think we could say that, right?
Yep.
And unfortunately, that's the least important thing to consider here.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Well, it is if he's the one who's doing it. I mean, maybe.
But in terms of something the
Even
performance,
not,
like when it's
that's
up,
like,
yeah.
you know, that's, you know, how many days and then you're done with it, and now what? Now what for the rest of your life?
And if we're talking about like PVC trim costs a little bit more than primed pine or primed whatever, there's no way that you're not going to make that money back in terms of maintenance. Because what's it going to cost when you have to hire a painter to scrape and repaint it? A lot.
Yeah.
There's no way it's going to cost less to have that happen even once than it would have if you ponied up the extra cash and bought PVC.
Right. So should we include other options in this discussion?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what about other wood products that aren't finger jointed, pre-primed pine?
Well, yeah, Rob used MirrorTech, right?
I didn't end up using MirrorTech.
You used PVC?
I considered use PVC, but MirrorTech, I believe, is made by Jeld-Wen. It's essentially exterior grade MDF, I believe.
Yeah.
It's the same stuff that you'll see on, like, you know, maybe your town has it on that big welcome sign. You know, that it's, you know, it's engraved and painted up.
Yep.
Like, you know, that's a big industry for that. Stuff is supposed to be bomb-proof. Really easy to paint.
Yep.
I just haven't worked. I ended up not going down that road, but my understanding is that they make trim elements, stock suitable for trim, and then also siding, beveled siding.
Same with Boral, which is a fly ash. We've done a lot of that with the Pro Home project and other articles. People like that.
People like it. They talk about you just got to change how you handle it because it is very floppy. It can be brittle in certain temperatures. That's the experience that we've seen. But the workability is great. Actually, I've heard that it works like wood, like where if you want to get that super crisp butt joint, you could get a little shooting board and plane the end with a hand plane and square it up. So
And what about other wood?
Well, I was gonna
solid pine, or what about using cedar?
Well,
like,
I'm
what
always
about
curious
other wood
about,
options?
and you've used a treated pine product, I believe.
lifespan.
And so, did you do that on your house?
Yeah.
How's it holding up? I mean, because at this point,
it's pretty new.
oh, it is. Okay,
So
I thought it was at least like
I've
a
had
year
good luck
or two.
with it. It's very easy to work with. It's not. That's what I was going to point out. Is primed pine is such a broad category, and the frustrating thing about it is that comparing one brand to another, you don't really know what you're buying until it may be too late. I mean, we won't name names, but some very prominent primed pine companies that have been like the benchmark for quality that have had major problems 10, 15 years later and a lot of complaints.
Yeah.
And you thought you were buying the best.
Yeah.
Is it always the joints?
I don't
No.
know what it was,
No?
actually.
I have seen multiple failures of this product in terms of, you get the telegraphing of the finger joints and you get some rot there. Like premature paint peeling because the primer coat, there was some kind of issue. But I've also just seen some rot happening like mid-board, you know, like where things just get punky and soft.
Yeah.
So another interesting extension of this conversation is if you switch to a rot-proof material, does that then open up the possibilities of ignoring the rules of preventing rot? Like I know that we recently had a project that had in the magazine that was vertical board and batten siding made out of Boral, polyash stuff, and because of its nature of never rotting and less expansion and contraction, you could butt it up really tight to like a perimeter wall of stone that was below the siding. You didn't have to have a gap for drying and for, so like it changes the way you build. But is that a good idea or is it a bad idea to like,
put all your stock in that material?
Yeah,
actually.
I mean, you did that. I mean, you have one skirt board on your house that's PVC, or some skirt boards that are pretty much they're within the minimum distance that you're supposed to keep siding or trim away from the dirt.
Like from grade,
from grade. Yeah.
Okay. I brought them right down,
buried them, direct burial.
No, but I put them within an inch or two of the ground. I have gravel border all around the house. I used PVC, and I brought it right down there because I was covering foam that was on top of block walls. So, you had to cover it.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. Doing great.
Did you ever peel back? No callbacks?
No callbacks.
Okay.
And then when I got away from the ground, I went to finger jointed.
Oh, you did?
Primed pine. And we'll see how that, I mean, right now it's still doing fine. Oh. I have it everything off the wall, so there's drainage behind everything. And
you prime cut ends,
these days we know that
everything.
is super helpful.
Yep.
We know that furring the stuff away from the wall and giving it space behind it.
Keep it dry.
Speaking of the 2018 code, I'm still surprised that hasn't become a mandate for everybody.
Like a rain screen?
Yeah, some ventilation gap. It's so universally accepted as the best. I mean, even siding manufacturers and trim manufacturers are like, do this. Or otherwise you void your warranty, but the code hasn't.
I'm trying to rifle through the code in my mind right now, and I'm trying to think if there are. I'm trying to think of provisions that are exclusively focused on the longevity of a product, as opposed to like codes.
Safety.
Is about safety.
Yeah.
The safety of the homeowner, safety of the people who either work on the project or have to maintain, or the safety issues.
I believe the Canadian building codes call for a ventilation gap,
and Oregon does too.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, we're gonna.
Canadians go for a pretty healthy one. I think it's like 3/4 of an inch.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's.
But you might be able to make the argument by extension of if it rots, then the rot is a problem.
Yeah.
And
environmental and health and blah blah blah.
So I don't know, but that's an interesting question. How the code arguments work. I mean, having a code official go, you know what? We're never going to put that in, and here's why.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter for your safety.
Yeah.
Period.
And we don't really care about the longevity of your paint.
Yep. Yeah, that's a consumer problem. We're just here to make sure your house is safe. Yeah.
Okay, so if you could go back and so what would you do if you were starting from scratch, like right now? What would you use for siding and trim? Let's just knock that out. Brian, you go.
Well, right now I'm really hot on aluminum, but
bring back aluminum.
Bring back, look in our next issue. The house in our next issue is all aluminum. It's aluminum roofing, aluminum siding. And all the trim details custom bent by the
I'm not sure that's cheap
installers. It's a no maintenance exterior. But anyway, I digress. I'll get to something more conventional, right? I would if
coil stock is aluminum. Would you do that?
If money wasn't an issue, my exterior would be natural wood unfinished. I'm staying with that.
Shosugi-ban?
Cedar. I like that. I would just do a cedar exterior.
Yeah, it's the charred wood.
Yeah, charred wood.
Yeah, I'd just do a cedar exterior and I'd let it weather.
Everything, like trim, siding, bevel siding, just trim. Or just cedar, sorry.
Cedar is pretty pricey.
We're leaving money out because that's...
Oh.
Yeah, that
depends whose house it is.
If money is like the part of the equation, like vinyl might be
absolutely
a real consideration.
If I don't have the money, obviously I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But...
I mean, if Boral is as good as the indications are showing it to be, then I think that's a great choice. It looks really good. The company, I mean, there must be other companies making it, but they seem to be the one that has kind of been the front runner that everybody knows about. So I'll treat them as a brand name. But
yeah, I mean, I think the composition is a little bit different than your. It's not fiber cement.
It's cementitious.
Yeah,
but it's.
So are you gonna lump? That product in with that category?
Because I don't at all like fiber cement trim. I think it looks lumpy and inaccurate, and it doesn't. It looks like it came out of a Play-Doh fun factory to me.
The trim products do for sure.
Yeah,
like the corner boards.
Yeah.
It would be my siding choice though if I had to make a concession on cost from my cedar siding. I would go to fiber cement.
Me too.
You would.
Yeah, and I'd probably use the pre-finished stuff.
Me too.
Yeah.
did it, and it still looks good now. I don't know how many years ago it was, but I didn't particularly love working with it.
Nope. I liked it.
And it's not very crisp. It doesn't have the Boral has pretty crisp edges. That is one drawback with the fiber cement. They can't do the same crispness.
What's the cost comparison on siding?
Boral's more expensive.
It is
for sure. Yeah, they're pretty pricey. They're up there with PVC.
The bang for the buck seems pretty good with fiber cement lap siding.
Yeah, it is. I think it's when I did it, it was what, $5 for a 12-foot clapboard or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it was when I priced it. It was the same cost for a 12-footer of fiber cement as it was for a foot of cedar, of clear cedar. Wow. Yeah.
Pre-finished too. Pre-finished.
No,
fiber cement?
no, it wasn't pre-finished. Yeah.
You know what I don't like about the pre-finished stuff? It has a lot of plastic. Every one of those pieces is protected with a piece of plastic.
Oh, when it arrives?
You're not going to like that, Brian.
I'm not going to like
Brian
that.
A lot of
not
plastic
gonna like
flying
that.
around the site. Don't like it.
I just felt like when I was, I went with the primed stuff, and I just felt like when I was putting it up, every time I fastened a board, I would think it would be really great if this was finished. If I didn't have to come back and paint this, although it does paint really well.
Yeah.
I only have one coat of paint on my house, and you wouldn't know.
I thought you were going back and putting another coat
I
on.
haven't done it yet. But unless you looked close, you wouldn't even see the lap marks. Like it takes paint so well.
Didn't you tell me a couple months ago you were going to do it?
I didn't do it.
Oh.
And you brushed?
I did tell you that.
Did you spray or did you brush?
No, I brushed.
You
In fact,
it?
and I did it as I went. So often I finished a day of putting up siding and spent the last 2 hours of the day painting that siding. And out the next day. And
Peripheral topic, just because I'm concerned we haven't talked about insulation this episode. Did you? I think we asked you this before, but if you had to do your whole house remodel again, where you put 2 inches of foam on the outside, would you do that again?
tough. There's something I would do things a little different in terms of energy.
Like air seal your attic?
If I did my whole house again, I would have done my whole house. If that makes any sense. I came so close to like gutting the house, but didn't get all the way there. And I would have just kept going and actually gutted the house, and I would have probably done, a little bit different system than I did. I might have done a flash and bat system. I like that.
Spray foam?
Yeah, I like that flash and bat or flash and fill stuff.
Oh. Yeah.
Surprising.
Yeah, I think it's a good system.
Surprising you would introduce spray foam into your...
On a place that you're trying to get tighter. It's that you're not building new. It's a pretty good option for tightening up.
Sure is.
Sure is. Not so great an option for the environment.
Tighten things up from neither is exterior foam, and if you're not using some sort of what are the options? It'd be a good question. What are the options for tightening up an old house during a remodel?
You can. One thing Nick Schiffer did was the peel and stick, a breathable peel and stick from
By Henry
Blueskin.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
I like that option.
That's real slick. I think he also put up new sheathing. I think he stripped it down to the board sheathing and put sheathing over it, which you could also just put a layer of zip system and then tape the joints.
A layer of zip up.
That's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
Get yourself a nice flat area to work
with.
with.
If
the zip bar is pretty.
And you're not changing much either. You're adding. I don't know. I'm just not sure about the zip bar.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it's not coming in thicknesses that you...
Well, the fastening is very different. You have to add a lot more fastening.
The fastening schedule is pretty severe.
Because those codes are based, the engineering requirements are for a house are based on the sheathing, structural sheathing being right against the framing. And now you're adding a bunch of foam between the two. So you have to think about that. And it's not as...
Yeah.
It doesn't seem as...
To retain all those shear values in the wall.
Yeah. I don't know.
The fastening pattern, I mean, we talked about it on one of the show. Yeah, it's intense, which may not be that big of a deal for some people, but...
What's the highest R value you get from it?
I think the thickest they have is 1.5 inches, maybe? I can't remember now.
Yeah. I think they were working
It was
on...
like 6?
No, it should be 9.
Oh, that much?
Well, polyiso is going to be, 6.5 per inch.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
R value.
And so it's that much foam, and then you're sheathing.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Airtight drywall approach, if you have gutted and you're going to reinstall...
Airtight drywall.
That's one way to do it from the inside.
Which seems to be pretty easy
Pretty
approach, I
doable?
think. Yeah, pretty doable.
This would actually be a really good topic. We should have just had that as a discussion topic. Is 3 approaches to tightening up an old house, or 6 approaches, or whatever.
Article idea.
There you go.
Do it.
But the airtight drywall approach is really, I mean, you're essentially installing drywall conventionally, but you're just sealing with either gaskets or acoustical sealant or some kind of caulk or sealant the major penetrations, whether it's around outlets or fan penetrations, like light penetrations.
Yeah.
I mean, these big, massive sheets of drywall are pretty airtight.
Yeah.
Are you backing up those joints with foam?
What joints?
Are you supposed to do that? Like, say, like your
the zip system?
No, drywall.
Oh.
So say like you're, top of a wall transitioning into a ceiling plane or a vaulted ceiling plane. Are you supposed to be, relying on the tape and compound to retain that air barrier, or are you putting some stuff behind in that? Are you sealing that joint first?
If I remember in our article with Myron, I think he was putting foam in that joint.
Yeah, I think in some areas you got to just use some can spray foam. Yeah, we should put that article up. It's for members, I believe.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll free it up for some people.
Become
Maybe
a member.
Just become a member and read this thing.
Worth it.
Because it's awesome. But yeah, it just seemed like, okay, this is a very doable thing. And we don't have to get complicated about shear values and ripping your siding off and redoing your flashing details.
Yeah.
It's just like...
Hit it with a blower door after. Make sure you did a good job.
Yeah.
So now that we've talked through this, I think I would put the foam on my house again. Because now that I'm thinking about like the house, like how nice is it that I just went over everything? I went up and over the rim joists. Everything got covered.
Yeah.
The thermal bridge is broken.
You put a big blanket.
I put a real nice big blanket on the house, and it was actually not that tricky to do.
Yeah.
It's not. It's hard work. I'm putting up all those furring strips, and then trying to get trim in plane and all that stuff. It's not that easy.
I think you should have done with pump jacks. Maybe next time that would be an easier. Ladder jacks are a little more having to move things around.
Yeah.
A cherry picker, man, or a lull. Fly in that thing.
Yeah, a lull with a big old plywood platform that you built.
Everybody needs a lull. Hashtag. All right, that's it for this week. Send your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com.
Hashtag lull.
Hashtag lull.
Get a lull.
Hashtag find homebuilding. Hashtag keep craft alive. You can also visit the website, findhomebuilding.com/podcast, to see our show notes. You'll see the photos of the old barn we talked about today. You'll see all the articles that we're linking to, and you can become a member and check out all the other great content we have behind the paywall on the site. Until next time, this is Justin for Rob and Brian saying, happy building and keep craft alive.